Hello everyone and welcome. Jesse here, or GameOverJesse as all of you may know me, and today we have some very exciting news about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, the next Zelda game, and some potential chances for more DLC in Breath of the Wild. There are a few things to go over, but first, let's begin with Go Nintendo's post saying Nintendo President wants more DLC for already released big games. More focus on online play, which we'll also get to here in a minute, and more game diversity. Go Nintendo says, President Furukawa, I hope I pronounced that right, please forgive me if I didn't, has shared a statement following today's Q2 earnings result. He's offered up a simple message to show where the Switch is now, how they plan on keeping momentum going, and what they'll do to woo in new players. His quote says, "We need continuous growth. We must keep releasing new software. That includes DLCs and other contents for big titles that are already out, and more focus on online play. Lastly, more genres and diverse games to draw in people who don't currently play on Switch." A big question everyone asks, which we've covered a lot in many different videos, is what will the next Zelda game be? There's a bit of a hint in this interview with the Nintendo president, but the simple answer, Aonuma has already answered it. Around the time Breath of the Wild released, Game Informer had an interview with Aonuma and Miyamoto. In that interview, Game Informer asked, now that The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild has released, what can we expect for the next Zelda game? Aonuma's answer? He said he would like to take what they learned from the multiplayer of Triforce Heroes and apply it to what they've learned from the engine of Breath of the Wild. So to put it simply, Aonuma wants to take the engine of Breath of the Wild and make a multiplayer Zelda game. This is something that he's actually been wanting to do for a long time. If we go back to the very first mention of Zelda Wii U, before it was known as Breath of the Wild, in the Nintendo Direct where they revealed Zelda Wii U and Wind Waker HD for the first time, Aonuma gave a few key notes on what he wanted to do with Zelda Wii U. One of those notes said he doesn't want you to think of Zelda Wii U as a single player experience. But what happened? Well, Breath of the Wild became a single player experience. Aonuma wasn't able to make the game that he wanted. Maybe Nintendo's seen the sales of Triforce Heroes and decided to not take the risk with Breath of the Wild, since it was already changing a lot of elements from past Zelda games. Making it a multiplayer game might make it so different that fans might not accept it. So instead of taking that risk, they made a traditional single-player Zelda game. It still had all of the changes like the Divine Beast, having bombs with the Sheikah Slate as opposed to actual bombs, and giving a lot more focus to the bow instead of just the sword. We also seen the removal of traditional dungeons, so maybe multiplayer was that thing that he wanted to add, but the game was already so different than a traditional Zelda game he didn't want to take the risk. Now Breath of the Wild is the most successful Zelda game ever. It has made more money and sold more copies than any other Zelda game has ever done. So I think, finally, Nintendo would be willing to let him take a risk and make the Zelda game that he's been wanting to make since he began Zelda Wii U. Now, whether or not you'd like or dislike the multiplayer Zelda games, it could be great if they just did one thing. Make it the same as they did with Breath of the Wild. By that, I mean make it a single player game with the option of multiplayer. Triforce Heroes, Four Swords Adventures, most of them were just multiplayer games that could be played single player. Some of them were fun, they had great moments if you're playing with friends. But if you play Triforce Heroes alone, you can manage to get through the dungeons by swapping back and forth, but it's not really that great. So what should they do? They kind of had this in Breath of the Wild. It was sort of multiplayer, and the fact that a friend couldn't play with you, but the CPU could. You could summon Wolflink. He couldn't go into the dungeons or shrines with you, but he would go almost anywhere that you could in the overworld, and he would interact with things without you telling him to, or you controlling him, while you could give him certain commands. He acted completely on his own. So imagine, instead of just the CPU controlling Wolflink, if your friend could pick up his Nintendo Switch at his house and play alongside you online. He wouldn't be able to go into the shrines with you, but what if he could? And what if it wasn't just Wolflink? I have a video talking about this, but imagine riding Epona across Hyrule Field while your friend is a Goron rolling beside you. Imagine sailing on a boat to an island off the shore, and your friend is swimming beside you as a Zora. Imagine jumping off a cliff and paragliding to a certain location, and your friend, playing as a Deku Scrub or a Korok, could fly alongside you. What if after you rescued a champion in Breath of the Wild, they didn't remain in their divine beast? They could come alongside you like Wolflink and help you out in battles, and help you out. This would be the perfect way to add in multiplayer for the next Zelda game, which is what Aonuma wants to do. And with the president being okay with this, in fact, the president is wanting to focus primarily on online play. This is why we're getting games like Super Smash Bros., Splatoon, Pokemon, Mario Kart. All of these great games that are fun, but a lot more fun if you play online. They are the games that Nintendo is pushing for people to buy this online service. So with the president wanting to focus more on online play, Aonuma wanting to make a multiplayer Zelda game by taking what he learned from the multiplayer aspect of Triforce Heroes, as he said, and apply it to the engine of Breath of the Wild. This would give us our first truly 3D Zelda game that is multiplayer. We've had several 2D multiplayer Zelda games, but never a real camera behind the back 3D Zelda game, and it seems like we're closer than ever to getting that. Now, going back to the DLC. Before, I would have said we had like a 1% chance of getting new DLC for Breath of the Wild. Aonuma even came out and stated he is done. Nintendo is done with Breath of the Wild. The Champions Ballad was the last DLC they were releasing for the game. They were moving on to work on the new Zelda game. But now, we have Nintendo, not just Nintendo, Nintendo's president, stating he wants DLC for already released big games. And this came after a financial meeting for the second quarter earnings result. So the Zelda game that helped launch the system, that sold more copies and made more money than any other Zelda game, almost everyone who bought a copy also bought DLC, which is almost unheard of. So what do you do when you release a game that makes a lot of money, and then the DLC makes a lot of money, and then you have the president saying that he wants more DLC for games that are already released? I think that's a hint that it could be possible. So I'm saying we went from a 1% chance to like a 5 or a 10% chance. Now Aonuma could keep his team working on the next Zelda game, whether it's this multiplayer game that he said that he wants to make, or if it's something entirely different. They could get a team like Grezzo, who worked on Zelda games in the past, like Majora's Mask 3D, Ocarina of Time 3D, they worked on Triforce Heroes, and they also brought the Game Boy Advanced version of Four Swords, added new content to it, and brought it to the Nintendo 3DS. So Grezzo has experience in remakes, new Zelda games, and sprite-based 2D Zelda games. We also have Tantalus, who worked on Twilight Princess HD and are currently rumored to be working on Skyward Sword HD. It would be very easy for Aonuma and his main team to just be focused on the next Zelda game. Don't forget they also have their handheld team. Nintendo, for Mario and Zelda, they have their big home console teams, and then they have their handheld teams. For Zelda, you have people that work on A Link Between Worlds, Spirit Tracks, Phantom Hourglass, and then you have a separate team that works on Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild. So while Aonuma has his home console team working on the follow-up to Breath of the Wild, and the handheld team working on whatever it is that they're working on, which Aonuma hinted he wanted to evolve what a 2D Zelda game is. I don't know what he meant by that, but it's very interesting to think about. So while he has those teams working on that, he could have Tantalus working on the Skyward Sword HD remake that's rumored, or Tantalus could be working on DLC for Breath of the Wild. In the same way, Grezzo, who just released the Luigi's Mansion remake on 3DS, as well as all of the other Zelda remakes on the 3DS, they could also be working on DLC for Breath of the Wild. This actually happens a lot. The main team will work on the main game, finish it, move on to the next game, and then they have third parties or second parties, or they take out a small part of their main team to form a team that continues working on DLC to support the main game. What does this all mean? Who knows? Take it as it is. I'm not saying that Nintendo's working on DLC for Breath of the Wild. I'm only saying there is a chance. Nintendo could have seen how well the DLC sold, and with the president wanting to focus on new DLC for already released big games, it would make complete sense for them to hire a secondary team like Grezzo or whoever to work on more DLC of Breath of the Wild. Let's not forget about Mario Odyssey. It really hasn't had a big DLC drop either, so we could get something pretty amazing from that as well. That's about all for now. I'll be back later with some more news. Let me know what you think of this type of video and what you think of the podcast style videos. We'll probably cover this on the podcast as well so you can get everyone else's thought, but I thought a more scripted video like this for something this important was needed. So let me know if you want me to keep making videos like this as well as the podcast, or if you just prefer listening to the podcast. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being amazing fans. I love you guys. You're all amazing on my Discord when we get together, chat, play games with each other. It's great. Thank you for allowing me to do what I do. Have a great day or night. I love you. Bye.
Hey everyone, it's me again, Elia Rose. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching this video. And you know what? If you're a fan of videos like this, you should totally subscribe and give this video a like, and comment below to let us know what type of videos you would like to see us create in the future. And if you would really like to support all of us here at the GameOverJesse channel, please consider purchasing a GameOverJesse t-shirt or becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/GameOverJesse, where you can receive many rewards, such as getting shoutouts, having any topic or theory that you select discussed on the podcast or made into its own video, having your question answered, joining on as a guest on the podcast, and playing with us during our Twitch live streams at twitch.tv/GameOverJesse, and much, much more.